I've been looking at this seriously for quite some time and going back at least 2 decades or so in my former life of a police officer, and just wanting to get an understand as far as the rhyme and the reason for a lot of the acting out that people do. And I just feel that it comes down to this, and that we have these Stone Age bodies, Dark Age thinking, and we have godlike technology.
So let's talk about people and culture and story, and where you see us headed, and how you might tell the story of our story.
I mean, I think this is a timeless and universal question. Again, and now that it's the 21st century, human civilization, as we've been living ourselves within our lifetimes and looking back throughout, this is a huge experiment.
Right.
We're not really wired for this. We're wired better for, intimate groups, probably not too much more than 100. And so with a dense population, 90% or so of the world lives in urban centers.
Right.
I remember you giving talks many times, and you'd give us a wingspan of both your arms, and you would say basically, modern civilizations at the tip of our finger.
Yeah. Well, I like your phrase, we aren't wired for this.
Yeah.
And part of that wiring, I guess, is you might say hardwired by evolution and genetics and our nervous system taking a certain set, but a lot of it's soft wired by culture and story. And if we're going to rewire ourselves, that might be a good place to focus. Yeah.
Create another story.
What is it about our culture and our cultural story that puts us in this adversarial relationship with the planet?
Well, if you look at modern civilization, from what I recall, that 90% of the time, we've only been at peace around 10% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that much of civilization has been an ongoing process of conquest, and not just the people, but the lands and the resources and everything upon those lands. And it's just looking at human history, the big picture. But then if we look at ourselves here within the United States, the history, the idea of manifest destiny,
right,
and divine discovery,
mm-hmm.
and that it was our role, our responsibility to tame the landscape. I mean, it was a literal war, and we just totally changed the landscape, and an attempt to undermine these people. I mean, it was a saying.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, kill the Indian, save the man.
Right.
What we did to the landscape was basically an extension of those people, of those cultures. But the thing is, that's also us. But we forget that.
Tell me about the body, because you work with the body, you work with people and their bodies, and maybe a little bit about how you attempt to rewire them and their lives and their stories.
Often, at times, when people first come in to work with me, I ask them, why are they here?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you interested? Why does this even matter? Why is this important to you?
Right.
Because really, I'd like them to get in touch with their emotions and focus on something that's big and perhaps bigger than them. I would say we're chasing a purpose and
mm-hmm.
legacy, and that movement is interacting with your environment. And so I feel that when people are healthy, happy, fit, alive, vital, imagine how much of a powerful contributor they are in the world.
Mm-hmm.
within their relationships and perhaps their communities, and then, start with the simple things, but simple is not always easy, right?
Right.
So if we have some ease within our body, that's the opposite of dis-ease, then, how are we going to show up in the world? How are we going to show up in our relationships? How are we going to contribute? How are we going to be in our legacy and helping the others after us?
So yeah, well, your perspective must come as maybe a bit of surprise to people who expect a lot of sets and reps and boot camp bodybuilding kind of personal training. Your approach is maybe a little bit more reflective than that.
I say it's a form of meditation. It's a form of self mastery, self discovery, self mastery. I mean, there's the old Zen saying: the way you do anything is the way you do everything.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're looking outside, let's just say, the environment, climate, we also need to consider that for ourselves.
Right.
This is just another biological body within the greater body, that of the biosphere. That's why I'm in this. It reminds me of the martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really the practice is long and deep.
Right.
And that, initially, I feel for a lot of, let's just say, younger men, I would, look back at this, like myself, going into the martial arts. It was a little bit more, let's just say, hard style.
Mm-hmm.
And after some experience, you start to really see the value and respect and appreciate the softer art.
Well, one thing that seems to come up for a lot of people these days, especially as we look at this ecological emergency and the idea that maybe the planet is going past overshoot, this tipping point into some sort of biological collapse. A lot of people are depressed and anxious and highly stressed. And I'm just curious how you work with people under these conditions.
A lot of times with people in, let's just say, stress, anxiety, I have them return to their breath.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some might look at it like meditation. And this old saying, I think I'm paraphrasing Nietzsche. And I mean, we probably have, heard some things like this from Man's Quest for Meaning.
Right. Victor Frankl.
Right. Yeah. Yes. And when you have a big enough dream, you don't need a crisis. When you have a big enough dream, you don't need a crisis. You're focusing on the dream.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you just basically you choose, you breathe, you pause, and you might. Sometimes a lot of times will ask me, like, how is this, Corey? Is this right? Is this perfect? And a lot of times this just comes up to my mind right away, and like within the group setting, sometimes I'll just kind of move closer to that person and kind of lean in toward them, and I'll whisper this: "It'll be perfect upon your last exhalation." Between now and then, we're practicing within our impermanent experience. You do the best that you can, one breath, one moment at a time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then another thing is just like be gentle with yourself.
Right.
As far as the expectation for perfection,
Mm-hmm.
Like I got to get this right. If we remember the story of the horse whisperer, be gentle with ourselves. Don't pull on the reins. Simple, not easy. you just try again. If you fall off the horse, you just get up and you dust yourself off. You get back on and you try again and again and again and again. Path.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they've shown that the people who are most successful are the ones who are the grittiest. Passion and perseverance. If you're familiar with Angela Duckworth and her book Grit, I mean, she used to be a teacher and now she's a neuroscientist,
Right.
and investigating what makes people tick. The people who are successful,
Right.
really stand out. It's passion and perseverance. So if you have a love, we have a lot to work with then.
What do you think about anger? Because this is, I think, really interesting at this moment in history, because for many of us who have this love for the natural world and this love for habitat and the land, and we see it being destroyed right before our eyes, I think it's a natural response to be really furious. Then you got to wonder if that's a productive emotion. So what do you do with that?
Well, we're emotional beings. And so I look at the many emotions similar to that of the seasons. And so it's not going to be perpetual spring and summer, let's just say. So we're not going to be perpetually happy all the time. And so it's natural to have some oscillation of the emotions.
Right.
Be with the emotion, respect the emotion, but don't stay there any longer than you need to.
Mm-hmm.
And don't let it be to the point to where it's destructive, I would say. When we're, let's just say, driven to a certain emotion, such as you described, I think what's going on there in a large sense is a sense of loss.
Yeah.
It's a sense of grief. So we're going through a grieving process, and there's, whether they say at least 5 stages of grief, there's that denial and anger, and then there's bargaining. I feel that's essentially what's going on in a way.
Right.
And that maybe not consciously, and maybe not for everyone, that what they're seeing in their emotional response, the anger, the environment, is that it's like a sacred mirror, and that it's a piece of them. Well, it is. I mean, the air is in our lungs, the water is in our blood and our tissues. When we really peel back the layers, this is what's at the core of these emotions, and rightfully so. But then there's an old saying, that I think the Quakers said this, pray and move your feet.
Right.
So if you're having this emotional response and these thoughts and prayers or what have you, okay, now it's time to get to work.
Right. And this reminds me, someone I follow in the activist community, she said that anger is the sugar high of activism. In other words, it can motivate you, and you can really be passionate for a short period of time, but eventually, and that can become counterproductive and inflammatory to the whole social system. So you got to be careful, and you got to let that subside and then get back to work.
I'm paraphrasing the Buddha. Like, if we hold on to the anger, we're only going to burn ourselves, let's just say. And so I think sometimes, like you said, it can help, let's just say, kickstart us.
Right.
But keep going and dig deeper. I mean, I would say, your passion, your dream, your legacy, and that the work that you choose to do, the ideas that you feel are going to be helpful with this, I would say it's less work and more of a labor of love.
Let's go back to this idea of story, and we often talk about Daniel Quinn and his book Ishmael. and the need for a new story. And
it's interesting. I work with the body, but a lot of times we have more heart-to-heart communication, such as we're doing now, and less moving. But I feel a lot of times when we're, especially speaking from the heart, that we're aligning our mind and our heart together. And what's the old saying, where the mind goes, the body follows.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say to give up our dominion.
Derek Jensen talks a lot about human supremacy and how that's really at the root of the problem. And maybe we need a story that's more circular and more inclusive. It seems like modern people, modern culture has forgotten how to draw a circle.
Yes.
Because all we draw is pyramids now. So this new story might be one that emphasizes relationship and connection above all else.
Well, talking about the circle, I mean, I sent you a few quotes this morning, but the one that's coming to mind is the one from Black Elk.
Mm-hmm.
Have the end in mind as well, like our own unique individual. And that, so we're all living, and all life is finite.
Mm-hmm. Impermanent.
Yeah. And so we're all going to the same place.
Right.
And so we're all on a hero's journey here. And the hero finds his own path in his own manner. And at the end of the journey is the end. And so live with the end in mind,
mm-hmm.
I would say. And then looking at the circle once again, where's the beginning and the end of the circle? Right. And so the first half often is that of us, making it in the world. And I would say the later half is being the elder mentor and giving back.
Right.
And giving back. Because really everything's on loan. It's not right. So dominion, that's an illusion. I think Chief Seattle alluded to that, right?
Right.
How can you buy the land? How can you buy the water, the air? You can't. That's just a social construct. It's a man-made idea.
Yeah, and that's something that we have yet to take seriously as a culture, because some people are pretty good adapters. Some people are fortunate enough to be able to adapt to the modern world, and others of us are deeply rooted in the paleo, and we really feel that connection with our ancestry, and maybe we don't adapt that well to the modern world. So we have to, I think, create a new world in which all of those people can flourish.
Rather than having an idea of conquest and winning, how about, something that's creative and life affirming?
Right.
Right. And that the winning is this: you get to live, and your children and your children's children. Right. I think was it the Iroquois Confederacy? 7 generations. Think of 7 generations or so ahead.
Right.
Right. Much more so than the fiscal year and quarterly profits.
Right.
7 generations going to be around 200 plus some odd years.
Mm-hmm.
And we're a very adolescent culture here, I feel, in the United States.
Yeah.
We're a young empire. Come back to that center and to that middle, that balance again. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's once again meditation. Finding the center. And this is how I see meditation, is that basically it's a matter of you coming to peace, right? Here and now, no past, no future. Mm-hmm. Learning how to die in order to live.
Nice.
Right? And so if you do that, and you come to a realization that there's no them. There is no other. And distractions right? These bread and circuses, this game of hide and go seek that we've been playing with ourselves for quite some time. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We have this idea that we have to, or some of us, let's just say, have this idea that we have to essentially destroy ourselves in order to be safe from ourselves.
Right.
So this is stop the nonsense in the suicide mission that we've been up to for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven and hell's between our ears. We are in the Garden of Eden, and let's start acting like it.